Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're super excited that you've chosen to spend some time with us to have a deep dive and have a discussion about high trust. Right on the outset here, just wanted to say that Matt Datel is here with us from High Trust, and he's the black square you see. Unfortunately, he had a little bit of technical difficulty, but he's here with us, and he'll be chiming in as we're having the discussion. But I wanted to go ahead and share that with everyone. So if you're wondering what that black square was, and so we'll get things kicked off here. Again, super excited that you've taken some time to join us today, and happy Hump Day, by the way. We're getting through it, and one of the things I'd like to do just at the very beginning is to say that we sent out a email at the very or yesterday, asking folks to deliver some questions to us that we could, bring to the panel today, and we've got those written down, and we'll make sure to bring those up. But also, during the conversation here, I would really encourage you to put some questions in the chat, and we'll make sure to get to as many of them as we can. We want to make this as interactive as possible, and also, we're going to show you some slides, and we'll have some data points on those slides. But the real power of this is the dialogue that we're going to be having. So it's going to be an open discussion between us, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions for all of you too. So I'll share a little bit about our firm, and then we'll take it from there. So we've been in business for 15 plus years. We're a cybersecurity audit and compliance firm here, based in the Tampa, Florida area, actually in downtown St. Pete. We're about 100 or so employees, and we're an integrated compliance firm, working with all the various standards, and I'll share those with you in a little bit. But the main gist of our firm is that we're here to help make your business better. We're not a check the box audit firm. We're really interested in becoming a solid business partner. And a couple of examples of the services that we offer beyond being a high trust assessor, we also help lots of folks with SOC 2, ISO 27001, PCI. We do a lot of penetration testing, risk assessments, and then of a variety. And then also we have a managed services group, so we can actually help organizations by being their outsourced compliance function. So I'd like to introduce the panel to you today, and I'm going to let Matt go ahead and introduce himself and his position at High Trust, and then Ryan Winkler, our practice director from 360 Advanced, is going to introduce himself as well. So Matt, go ahead.
Thanks, Carlos. So this is Matt Dadel. I'm one of the directors here at HITRUST, and I've been here for about 6 years now. I do apologize for technical difficulty. I have tried to do different things with the camera and move the lens cover off before anyone asks. I did try that. It's not working, but we'll proceed with the audio today. But yeah, in my role at HITRUST, I oversee the assessor program and the HITRUST Academy, and work directly with the strategy team to expand the adoption of the HITRUST framework. So looking for new customers, new assessors, and just more organizations that can find benefits and value from doing high trust. Prior to this, I used to work up at PwC up in Pittsburgh. I was an IT auditor there, did a lot of healthcare work and healthcare assessments. So naturally, I got exposed to high trust, and that led me to where I am today here in Dallas. So thanks for having me today.
Oh, sure thing, Matt. Go ahead, Ryan. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Appreciate that. My name is Ryan Winkler. I'm a director here at 360 Advanced. My main focus and role is on our healthcare practice, as well as delivering HIPAA type work, which includes high trust. I've been at 360 Advanced for about 8 years or so now, and in my prior life, I worked for United Health Group, and more specifically Optum, where I was an information security analyst in their business process outsourcing division. And so a lot of my background is in the healthcare space, so naturally found my niche here with High Trust, and looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Yeah, me too. I am too, Ryan. My name is Carlos Guerrero. I'm a compliance executive over here at 360 Advanced, and I'm helping on the business development, sales, and marketing side of things. I've been here at 360 Advanced for a couple years now, and kind of help MC some of these webinars. So make sure to tune in every month and learn a new topic. So I'm going to share this agenda with us today, or with you. and will be the framework or the outline for the conversation we're going to have today. So we'll talk a little bit about the controls that are inherited from AWS and other platforms and why that could be important to you if you're looking at HITRUST, how HITRUST utilizes a variety of frameworks. We'll certainly dive into how HIPAA plays a role in HITRUST, and then if you've been paying attention to HITRUST, you know that recently an E1 and an I1 certification came out. So we'll be talking about all three certifications today and how they're different and which one might be the best for you as a business. And then we'll also talk through the timelines of the various HITRUST certifications. And then one of the new aspects of the HITRUST program is it being threat adaptive. And we want to talk to you a little bit about what that means and why that is important. And then at the very end, we'll discuss a little bit, how to or why to utilize HITRUST or how it can be applicable in an industry that's not healthcare. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just get things going. So and you can go right ahead to the next slide, Eric, if you'd like, to the one that we have with some information on it. So what controls are inherited from AWS and other platforms? And Matt, I'll let you take that one, and then followed by Ryan, maybe giving some real world examples of how that could apply to the clients that we serve.
Absolutely. So a big thing we've done at HITRUST is create a program called shared responsibility. And what that means is when you're using one of the cloud service providers that have been through a HITRUST assessment, you can inherit their controls directly into your own. That helps speed things up. You already have evidence and scores that are certifiable, which makes your job a lot easier and makes the assessors' lives a lot easier too. What we've done is we've worked with some of the top cloud service providers, AWS, Azure, Google, and others, and we've looked at each and every control in the CSF. So all 2,000 controls, we've had this group work on to determine which controls are fully inheritable, partially inheritable, or not at all inheritable. And the nice thing is, depending on the assessment you're doing, you can see on the chart here, 70 to 85% of those controls can be inherited from your cloud service provider. And all the big ones have done a HITRUST assessment and gotten their certifications. So it makes your life a lot easier when you're working with them. Some of the leaders like AWS, the nice thing is they put out guidance online every year that they update, which shows directly how to get in contact with them, how to request the information, and how to implement that into your assessment. So it's a big part of what we're doing and what we're continuing to do, working directly with the cloud service providers. That's a big part of our initiatives and our growth strategy.
Excellent. No, that's a great way of explaining what's going on. Now, Ryan, maybe you can chime in on how that applies to your work that you're doing in the trenches with clients that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of, in most cases these days, a lot of organizations are in the cloud, whether they use AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, even Oracle, Cloudticity, Snowflake. All the big players participate in the HITRUST Shared Responsibility Program, which is a great thing. And really it allows organizations to increase their time, effort, and efficiency by being able to leverage the controls that the cloud providers are responsible for having in place as part of your system. So an example of that would be, say your entire environment is hosted with Azure. And that's the only place where there is in-scope systems. There's no physical location. Well, then all the physical requirements that come into play then become the responsibility of that that cloud service provider. And if they're already HITRUST certified and participate in the inheritance program, you can just inherit their specific physical security or environmental security controls. And it makes it a lot easier when it comes to gaining that level of validation right through the HITRUST platform itself. Another cool thing I wanted to point out about the shared responsibility program is there are documents that HITRUST has actually published on the MyCSF website for the larger players that actually has, it takes out all the guessing work as to what can I inherit from these cloud service providers. There are documents that are out there that tell us exactly what requirements can be inherited and what can't be inherited. And they also go a step further and tell us if it can be inherited based off if you're using that cloud provider as more of an infrastructure or if you're using that cloud provider as more of a platform. So those documents are great, and they make it really take all the guessing game out of knowing which requirements you should and should not be inheriting from the cloud providers.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent, Ryan. And Matt, I would assume that you're working diligently with other players, even smaller ones or ones that are coming online or getting more popular all the
Mhm.
time, so that whatever choices folks make, that the inheritance is a thing they can utilize.
Absolutely. The shared responsibility program, it's a continuous working group that meets all the time, and we're adding new members. So it's not done, and it won't ever be done. It's going to continue to evolve as new controls come in. We'll continue to have meetings, invite more cloud service providers, and provide that guidance that the customers can benefit from.
Oh, that's excellent. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll move on. Kind of keep things rolling here. So, what are the comparisons of HITRUST to other frameworks? The genesis of this topic was really intended to have a discussion amongst Ryan and Matt about sort of the origins in some ways of HITRUST, and how a variety of frameworks were used in order to create this framework. And I think, Matt, you did a good job the other day when we were kind of prepping for this. I mean, do you want to speak a little bit to the origins of the frameworks and how it's expanded to leverage multiple ones to create this unique framework that we call HITRUST?
Certainly, yeah. So getting back to the beginning, when we released the first CSF version, it was founded off of ISO 2701. And since then, we've added new controls, new versions, we call them authoritative sources. Authoritative sources, think of as different frameworks or different regulatory factors like HIPAA or GDPR. We look at the latest changes, the latest versions, and we incorporate these into our framework and deduplicate it when you put them into an assessment. So I know on the slide here it says 2,200 plus requirement statements. When you do an assessment, the nice thing is you're going to get a unique control set for your organization. And on average, it's around 375 for the R2 assessment, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But we incorporate these different controls so you can add value, whether you're looking at this from a compliance standpoint of we need to be HIPAA or GDPR compliant, or if you're looking at it from a security standpoint saying, hey, we like what NIST has, we like what ISO has, we want to be secure using those controls, we're putting those into our framework. Comparing us to some of the other options, though, we update a lot more frequently. And that's part of the beauty of HITRUST is we look at the different emerging threats, trends, and changes in regulatory factors so that organizations don't have to play this guessing game or go on a giant research project when trying to decide which controls they need to implement and be testing. They can just open up the HITRUST CSF, go to the latest version, and scope in their assessment, and all that work's done for you. And on top of that, it's deduplicated. So you're not testing the same password control 6, 7 different times. I know audit fatigue is a big thing in the industry these days. We're trying to mitigate that where we can. That's a little bit about the framework and what we do. But to me, it's not just the framework, it's the whole process that really adds that value. You're talking about HITRUST. We do provide the framework, yes. We also have the technology, which we call MyCSF, which allows companies to scope in their assessments and attach evidence and stay on top of things. Both assessors and customers can utilize that tool. And we have this assessor community, and all of them are required to get trained on an annual basis, which keeps them on top of things, keeps that quality high. And lastly, which is very unique to HITRUST, we review each and every assessment. So when you go through a HITRUST assessment, you get that quality stamp from our team. So we have the framework, the technology, the training, the assessors, and the assessment stamp itself from our side. So that kind of separates us a little bit in terms of what other organizations are doing.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Ryan?
Just to add to what Matt was saying there, one additional item I think as well that HITRUST provides over other frameworks is they also provide a model for evaluating those requirements as well. There's a specific scoring model that references that can be used, and there's special calculations that organizations can then use to determine the risk levels of requirements within their organization. A lot of the times, everyone tries to achieve HITRUST certification, but we take a step back and realize that the HITRUST framework is a risk management framework, and it's at the very beginning, it's really meant to assess risk within your organization, and there's already a built-in risk treatment and risk methodology in place based off the framework as you're going through the program. Another thing too, just regarding the authoritative sources, in most cases, a lot of organizations have to be compliant with more than just one regulation or standard. And HITRUST makes it really easy to, show compliance with multiple standards within one report. For example, you might have a requirement to be, you might have to abide by the HIPAA security rule as a business associate, but you also have, your client may have, personal information stored by residents of California, and you have to also abide by CCPA, and allows you to, take all those requirements and put them into one assessment. And like Matt said, reduce that audit fatigue, deduplicate the requirements, and basically take an assess once, report many approach.
No, that's great, Ryan. I appreciate you adding some color to that. I think we got several questions here, and I'm trying to line them up with what we're speaking about. And someone asked this question. They said, something like, "Hey, we're seeing that some of our vendors aren't recognizing HITRUST, and so they continue to ask us for more, right? Maybe it's security questionnaires, maybe it's something else completely like a SOC 2 or ISO 27001. I know that we don't necessarily have control over what what clients are doing, but in terms of being in the marketplace, are you seeing any trends as far as that goes, Matt? And how would you answer that question, or how would you talk to someone if they brought that topic up to you?
Absolutely, and it's education. It's getting people familiar with what HITRUST is and what the value and the transparency looks like when you open up the HITRUST report. Organizations that have in the past maybe sent out questionnaires and that was their go-to strategy, they're not looking to ask or accept HITRUST today because it's not part of their standard process. But once they realize, okay, the HITRUST report is going to give me a very transparent look at this organization's security posture and their compliance efforts, and it's going to give me way more detail than that questionnaire used to, they're going to find value in this, and it's something they will begin to accept and have begun to accept. There's this group that's been meeting for quite a while now called Health Third Party Trust, or H3PT for short. This is a group of some of the leading healthcare providers that have teamed up because they have this common challenge of third-party assurance. They share a lot of the same vendors, technologies, and to vet 500 vendors, to do an audit or risk assessment or ask questionnaires of all of them, it's a very complicated process. So we're looking to speed that up, make that more efficient and transparent for them. And a big push for a lot of them is they want to see HITRUST assessments coming in. Now that we have new assessment starting points, which we'll talk about, it allows them to risk rank and decide which option works best for their vendors, have everyone get a HITRUST certification, and these come back. Now they have a transparent report and they can see, okay, these 300 organizations have an R2 certification. That's excellent. These 200 haven't responded. Maybe we should call them back. They can look at what's happening and get a better opinion or a better look into the security, because your vendor's risk is your risk as an organization, and that's something that we've seen unfortunately fail in different industries over the past. And we're looking to help make that process a little easier, a little bit more transparent.
No, that's great. Ryan, how about from your seat? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question a lot, to be honest with you. The one thing to realize is that, like Matt said, it's about educating, and realizing that, having a long drawn out questionnaire that's just self-attested, a third party validated report, goes past that. It shows that you've not only met those requirements, but you've also been validated against those requirements by a third party. So it increases that transparency, but it also increases the ability for other organizations to rely on that you have, what's in place. And the reports too, the HITRUST reports, they state within them what regulatory factors are being selected or what authoritative sources were included. And I think it's just a matter of educating, those organizations, and maybe sitting them down and say, here, let me explain to you why this actually is better than a questionnaire. And I know that doing something like that may take less time than having to go through a 300 question questionnaire, when in all actuality it's already in your HITRUST report most likely. So that's the advice I would have.
There's a very popular phrase we hear a lot, that's kill the questionnaire. It's not good enough anymore. We're just doing it because it's the old way. But a questionnaire, like Ryan mentioned, it's self-attested, and no one's going to put in, hey, we do a horrible job at security and send that off. It's just not realistic.
Yeah.
Organizations are going to give themselves, the green check where they can, but when you have an independent party come in and really take a look at the relevant controls, that's where you're going to understand, is this organization secure, and what needs to be changed, if anything.
No, that's
Yep.
excellent. And I would say that if not just thinking about high trust as something that you have to get through, but if you're involved with high trust, consider yourself a part of the ecosystem and do some educating, right? Point people towards high trust or towards your assessor or someone in the community that can help, continue to have this conversation with folks to do that education. I know we're more than happy to do that, and I know that Matt and the High Trust team would be as well. So let's move on to the next topic. How does HIPAA play a part in high trust? And now the genesis of this question, Ryan, was from us sitting on multiple calls with prospects typically, and they're trying to decide, what to pick in terms of, HIPAA, and when deciding, when we're scoping. You want to talk a little bit about that process and how you guide people?
Yeah, so the good thing the thing I like the most about high trust is it takes the guesswork out of am I or am I not HIPAA compliant? And because the high trust program is so prescriptive, the I-1 assessment and the R2 assessment encompasses the HIPAA security rule already. And so the good thing about that is completion of the programs. That is that's basically a statement saying I am HIPAA compliant. And the good thing about it too is because the R2 is a risk management program in and of itself, that can actually be used as evidence of your HIPAA risk assessment, because it is a risk analysis, and you are ranking and identifying risks within your organization, and the MyCSF platform has built-in workflows to identify areas where you might have deficiencies and have to implement corrective action plans. So the best thing about it is the fact that it really does take all the the guesswork out of it, and also helps organizations know right there as clear as day, what do I need to be compliant with in order to be HIPAA compliant.
People don't always know that, do they, Ryan? We were speaking with a prospective client not too long ago, and this topic came up because they were struggling with the risk assessment component of compliance, and when you brought this up, this was something they had never heard before. But I think it's worth mentioning and really almost hammering home a little bit about the importance and how the framework is a risk management framework.
Yeah, and in communications that have been sent out by HITRUST, it's been recognized that OCR does recognize HITRUST R2 program as a valid risk management framework, to count towards that requirement for HIPAA. So even with that being said, that's that makes a lot of waves right there. And a lot of organizations, even within MyCSF, as they complete an assessment, they can download different scorecards, run different reports to show the different rankings of risks within in their organization. HITRUST, the MyCSF platform, actually has a HIPAA compliance pack within it now as well, where it'll show the ranking of all the requirements that map to the HIPAA security rule, and how the organization is measured up all within one report.
Excellent. Matt, do you want to add any color to that?
I think you nailed it there, Ryan. And the HIPAA compliance pack has been one of the best things in terms of reporting that a lot of the customers are benefiting from. So instead of sending your full HITRUST assessment, which sometimes you don't need to do, you can just send the HIPAA compliance pack out, because it is an extracted formatted report that you can use to demonstrate we are compliant. Here's a quick look at that. And it provides enough detail to give you that coverage. So HIPAA is very much ingrained in HITRUST. We have a lot of healthcare organizations. Our name used to mean Health Information Trust. That's where it came from originally. So healthcare is in our culture. HIPAA is a big part of that. And it's a source that a lot of companies do select and use to maintain their certification and compliance.
Excellent. All right, go ahead to the next slide. All right, this is where things get really fun, guys, and we're really excited to chat with you a little bit about the 3 certifications. And I mean as fun as this can get. Come on. All right, let's get excited about these 3 different certifications. And so, when I started here 2 years ago, there was one HITRUST assessment. It was called the validated assessment, and now that's essentially in my terms the R2. But there's three more, and Matt, I know this has got to be one of the more exciting aspects of what you guys have been cooking in the kitchen and bringing to the marketplace. Do you want to talk a little bit about the development of this and how it all came to be?
Absolutely. So remember a couple of years ago when you talked to a company about HITRUST, and some of them would say, oh, that's a lot of work. That's going to get expensive. Maybe we don't want to do that. And you know what? They weren't always wrong. It really is a lot of work to do that historic validated assessment, which we now call the R2. So we took that advice, we took that response back internally, and we've created some different starting points. The E1 and I1 option. I1 came out last year, and E1 launched in January of this year. And the nice thing about them is, depending on the level of risk you have as an organization, you may decide we only want to do an E1 assessment or only an I1 assessment, and that's perfectly fine. You can get certified on those assessments. I'll start with the E1. So that one is called E1 because it's an essentials security report. It's a 1-year certifiable one, and these controls are controls that every single organization should have in place, no matter how big or small, no matter what industry they're in. If you don't have these 44 controls in place, you're not doing something right, and you need to kind of reevaluate your security program. So the E1 assessment, it's a great starting point for startups. It's a good place for companies that are just getting their feet wet with HITRUST, and they want to look at the initial set of controls to build their program off of. It's still a validated assessment. So an assessor still comes in, checks the controls, sends the results to HITRUST to QA and review. And the E1, it can be the only report you ever do. You can do it annually if you want to, or you can use it as a building block, because all of the controls in the E1 are also found in all of the I1 and R2 assessments. So moving forward to the I1, say that's where you want to be doing your assessments. The I1, similar to E1, it's always the same set of controls. But the I1's a bit more. It's 182 controls, no matter what organization's doing it. So in size, the best comparison I can give is like a SOC 2 report in terms of level of effort and how much time it would take to go through. The I1 assessment, this is implemented controls. So you're not as focused on policy and procedure with this one. It's the implementation. Are the controls working? Are they working up to par with what should be expected? And it's a good report. It's meant for organizations that have a moderate level of risk, because it's going to provide a coverage over a variety of areas that demonstrate that they take security seriously, and they're going a little bit above and beyond on that. So that's the I1 assessment. The R2, this is the one that most organizations do, and this is the one that's been around for the last 10 plus years. Risk-based 2-year certification is what R2 stands for. The thing about the R2 is it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The controls will change depending on the scoping factors you select. So if you're a large hospital and you select, HIPAA compliance, and you select some other things, you may have 500 controls or more in your HITRUST assessment. Whereas if you're a cloud service provider, you may have an entirely different set of controls depending on the factors you've selected. So the controls scope and scale with the organization, so they're relevant, and you're getting the most value out of your HITRUST assessment, testing the factors that matter to what you want to be compliant with. So you can select all the factors if you want to and make it a 1,500 control assessment, but not too many firms decide to get that aggressive with it. But you can also keep it condensed to what matters, and that's the beauty of the R2. It is very flexible. So no matter which organization you are, now it's not always climbing Mount Everest when you're doing HITRUST. There's different starting points, there's different endpoints, and you can use it as a stepping stone approach where you go from E1 to I1, maybe even to R2, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's a little bit about each one. Yeah.
That's perfect. Go to the next slide and I'll ask Ryan a question. So Ryan, how has this changed the conversations that you're having with folks?
Yeah, no, this has been really great, honestly. One of the things that a lot of organizations really like about it is they can demonstrate that they are making progress as they traverse the portfolio now. So before it was, hey, I got to spend a year, or a year and a half, getting myself ready for the R2. Whereas, now I can go 4 months, get my E1 certification, go another, 6 months, get my I1. and I'm demonstrating that I'm moving up, through the HITRUST portfolio on my way to R2, and don't have to wait a whole year and a half to complete my R2 before, I'm able to demonstrate that compliance, which is a game changer. Another thing too is, like Matt said, with smaller organizations who may have, smaller risk profiles within their organization, but still need to demonstrate some level of compliance under their belt. E1 is a great E1 or A1 I1 are a great opportunity for organizations to leverage. They're static sets of controls. They are a certification. HITRUST gives out 2 reports with them too. One that shows what the scope is, and one is a full report. One report is you can hand out to organizations, and then another one is meant mostly for internal reasons. It's a good program, and it's been really great so far.
That's fabulous. And so on my side of the street, as I'm talking to folks that are really sometimes coming to us because they've been asked by a lot of times a prospective client, to get HITRUST certified. And this also ties into a question that we got from my friend Steve. He asked about healthcare providers, being what are they asking for, which got me to think about contractual obligations. Like, what are we seeing in contracts, and are they starting to reflect asking for things like I1 or R2? Or are they just still saying HITRUST certification? And what do you think's going to happen, Ryan?
Yeah, I've been seeing it change. Now, not everybody's moved over, yet, but from the conversations I've been having with prospective clients and current clients that do work on behalf of a covered entity, a lot of them still say they have to be HITRUST certified, but some of them are moving now to indicate which level of certification that they have to have. And some of them still require that organization to be R2 certified, as well as include certain regulatory factors. So it's really depending on who that is, but the most stringent ones I've been seeing are the payers that have really been trying to make sure to push it with their vendors. But it's all over the healthcare industry. It's not just payers. Clearinghouses and payers, as well as physician practices and hospitals, are all undergoing it as well.
That makes sense. And Matt, I would imagine that kind of leads into that whole education thing, right? You guys are not only you're educating all aspects of the ecosystem, including the folks that are asking for these validations.
Exactly. And a lot of the payers and providers are kind of paving the path for the industry and being the first ones to really push the different levels into their contracts to say, you're low risk, we want an E1, you're moderate risk, we want an I1, you're high risk, R2, and be on top of that. I expect it to be more seen in more and more contracts, because we already know today a lot of companies have contractual requirements that say you need to be HITRUST certified, but it doesn't necessarily say which type yet. So I would recommend anybody, if you get a contract like that, give them a call, shoot them a note and say, what level are you looking for, just to make sure and you're meeting the minimum requirement. But after that, don't be surprised when you see a lot of these contracts start to change and incorporate that language. And companies will have multiple contracts ready. Once they do a little initial risk ranking, they'll send out the according contract with that matches.
That's great. Okay, let's move over to the timelines of the various certifications, and we'll go to that next slide, Eric, that we have. That's a nice graphic. Now, this is an illustrative example. Obviously, complexity makes a difference in terms of time frames. How ready are you makes a difference in terms of time frames. But we wanted to give you a rough idea. So I'm gonna let Ryan break this down for you, but I want to tee up that I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about the QA process specifically, and how that handoff is, from the assessor to HITRUST. Ryan, I'll hand this off to you and kind of let you explain to folks what goes into the various assessments.
Yeah, if you select a firm like 360 Advanced to assist you in your HITRUST journey, obviously you always want to start with, and depending on where you're at, most organizations that come to us who are looking for HITRUST for the first time want to start with a readiness. And a lot of the times that can take up to 2 to 3 months or so, depending on which certification you're looking at. really for I1 and R2, about 3 months or so for most readiness. And that's assuming that, the organization is, not too complex, maybe hosted in the cloud, maybe a SaaS company. So this is just illustrative for a normal sized company, 100 to 500 people, types of organizations. So for the E1 and I1, we know that those are assessed against implementation only, whereas the R2, it's policy, process, and implementation, and then optionally measured and managed. So we have to account for that in the R2, which is why it takes a little bit longer. But in the grand scheme of things, the E1, typically you can get through it in about 6 months if you're starting from scratch. Remember, it's meant to just be the essential requirements that get put into place. The I1, there's a typo on the requirements. It's 182, not 162. The I1, because of that, can take a little bit longer to get prepared for, 6 to 9+ months. And then, with the R2, same thing with remediation, 3 to 5+ months as well. And then of course with the R2, it can be very different from E1 or I1 depending on the scoping factors that you answered for your R2, right? It could take longer based on if you have a 280 requirement assessment or a 600 requirement assessment, right? Those are just some things to keep in mind.
Makes complete sense. And first of all, Ryan, you passed the test. Thank you. We
I was wearing my glasses today.
With flying colors. We question or not a trick question, but a trick slide. So you are certainly an expert in your field, and we appreciate you. But the other thing, but I was going to ask you, can you explain measured and managed to folks who might not understand that terminology and why that is a little extra, meat?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are measure and manage are what are called maturity levels, just like policy, procedure, and implementation are. Those are 5 different areas of which you have, an organization is validated against for a particular requirement. Measured just means that you are actually measuring the effectiveness of a requirement. And then managing a requirement means that you are addressing any deficiencies that may arise from measuring that requirement. So, you measuring means you are making sure it is working, and if it's not, you're using managed to identify what pitfalls there are and fix those issues accordingly.
No, appreciate that explanation for folks. And Matt, what's unique about HITRUST is you're involved in this process, right? I mean, there is a QA component to what you do. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and why it's important?
Yes, that's a big part of what HITRUST does is we review each and every validated assessment, and only HITRUST provides that certification. So what happens is, the customer will start with their assessor firm, they'll do all of the readiness work, they'll work together on that validated assessment, and then they'll reserve a spot with our QA team. And that's the week our team is going to open up the report and review it. So you can reserve it, well in advance, and you can move that date if you need to, but you reserve that spot, you perform the assessment, everyone signs off on it, and Ryan and his team will submit the results to HITRUST. Reservation comes up, and our team's going to open up that report. And first of all, we have some automated technology that's going to take a look at everything real quick, do a quick scan, make sure there's no missing components. Afterwards, we're going to have a QA analyst that's going to open up the report, take a deep dive in. They're going to start sampling controls and kind of reperforming the audit, looking at what was tested, what scores were put in here. Does the score match the evidence that's been provided? And we'll work directly with the assessor firm to get all the information we need to feel that there was a good job done and that we feel confident with the scoring that was provided. Once that process is completed, we issue out that report and the certification directly to the customer and give them a little congratulations, because it is a big deal, when you go through a HITRUST assessment. So no matter who you're working with or what company you are, if you buy a validated assessment, you're getting it from HITRUST at the end of the day. And if the assessor is not doing a good job, they're not going to stay in our program very long. So 360's been in for quite a while. They've been through plenty of QAs. So we take quality very seriously, and we don't have enough people to do every assessment ourselves. That's where the assessor community is such a big deal to what we're doing as an organization. They're really the troops on the ground that keep this thing moving, and their quality really carries the whole brand of HITRUST. So we rely on them, and we perform that QA to make sure that quality is being maintained. So that's a big part of what happens. And like I said, HITRUST reviews each and every validated assessment. That's a big part of what keeps us busy.
Excellent. No, thanks for sharing that. We can go ahead to the next slide. And I'm going to take a moment just to pause because I know that as we start finishing up, people are getting going and getting on with their day. I just wanted to let folks know that as we do wrap up, you're going to get some emails from folks on our side if you join today, and we're going to ask you how we did. So please provide some feedback. It's always helpful as we start to just kind of evaluate what we're doing. So be looking for some communication as soon as this is over. Let's talk a little bit about this concept of being threat adaptive. That was, with version 11 coming out, Matt, that was something that was, a bit of a buzz. And so, can you speak a little bit about, not only what that is, but why that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a full team of experts that we call the standards team, and they're constantly looking at what are the emerging threats and trends in the industry today, whether that's healthcare, financial services, or elsewhere. What are the new technologies and trends and threats that matter that we need to have controls put in place? If you think about laws and regulations, those don't change very quickly, and other frameworks don't change very quickly. But HITRUST, the beauty of what we do is we tend to release a new version twice, sometimes more than that each year. And we're looking at those emerging threats to make sure the controls we put in each and every assessment are relevant. So if there's a brand new type of threat where people are attacking your firewall or attacking your system and overloading it, and there's not a HIPAA control or something else control that covers it, HITRUST will put a control in there. If there's enough instances and enough attention given to that, we're going to put that control in place into our assessments to make sure you're protected. So that's part of what we're doing. We're monitoring what are the emerging threats, what are the challenges organizations are facing that come with new technology and just new experienced people in the industry, and we're making sure our framework is adapting accordingly. So it gives you a little bit better level of assurance and security posture as an organization. So to any CISOs out there that have HITRUST or are considering HITRUST, this is why we set up this way, to make sure that you're protected. That's a big part of what we're trying to do here.
Excellent. Ryan, how's this impacted what just compliance in general? I mean, how is this different and why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time about the difference between security and compliance, right? And I think this is one of those great things that helps, in this instance, compliance helping security, right, with a actual threat adaptive framework. So adhering to HITRUST requirements that are threat adaptive ultimately helps organizations be more secure, and they're relevant. And they're basing this information off of what's going on in the industry or in the world of cybersecurity in general, which that's no other standard is doing that right now.
Excellent. I got a good question here that I think I'll bring up here, and Matt, this will be for you. Someone asked about artificial intelligence, and not just artificial intelligence, but measuring. I mean, we know there's NIST has a framework out now, or a way to measure. So how's artificial intelligence from a security standpoint being thought about at HITRUST?
It's a hot topic for sure. I mean, it's already something we've incorporated into my CSF when we're doing our QA reviews to help speed up the process from our side. But also we understand artificial intelligence, it's capturing information, it's storing it somewhere, and you have to make sure you're not putting the wrong information in there. You're not sending ChatGPT your coding information, which I've heard some funny stories online about. There's new regulations that haven't caught up yet to artificial intelligence, and companies need to make sure that they're staying compliant and secure and using it when appropriate. So, we do have our annual conference coming up in October, and not to be all salesy about that, but that is a session we're looking to do, is one on artificial intelligence. Bring some experts in and show where HITRUST can help in those areas, because that is something that we're certainly constantly reviewing, and there's more to come in terms of information around how to protect your data using artificial intelligence and how to stay protected if you continue to use artificial intelligence.
That's great. I'm glad you covered that, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more and more questions about artificial intelligence from now on. Go ahead, Ryan.
I agree. I mean, I think we're not too far away from having specific security type controls related to AI, maintaining the integrity of AI models, making sure that, they output accurate information and whatnot. I think that's coming, and I think it's going to be big.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, let's go ahead to the final slide, and we'll this is we don't have any stats or anything to go with this, but it is something that we want to discuss. And I will say that we'll have this discussion here, guys. And if you're in the audience, please ask a question. And if we get it in, we'll be able to discuss. But also, you know, if we get done early, we'll let you get back to your day a little bit early too. So we're not just going to push this through to the very end for just for that sake. So, but this is the final discussion point, and it's a big one, I think, because a lot of times, you know, HITRUST is known as the healthcare framework, but that's not necessarily the case in reality, is it, Matt? And what are, you know, just kind of talk to that point, I guess.
Yeah, our roots are certainly in healthcare. There's no hiding that, and that's not something we're trying to hide. We're not abandoning healthcare by any means, but we've evolved and we have made our framework industry agnostic. So no matter which industry you're in, you can use HITRUST, the framework, the assessments, the value of the assessors to help you protect your sensitive data, because that's what we're all about, is protecting sensitive data, period, not just in healthcare. So if you're financial services, higher education, manufacturing, you tend to be pretty highly regulated, and that information you have to keep secure. Well, in the healthcare industry, they have the highest risk because you're protecting human lives. So if anyone takes, you know, security seriously, it's the healthcare industry. But that doesn't mean that's the only industry that should. So, you know, nobody wants their financial data to be corrupted. Nobody wants their trade secrets to be out there. Nobody wants their grades to be out there if they're in college, things along those lines. It's important to protect that stuff. So what we do is we're creating controls on how to protect information, store it securely in your system, and make sure only the right people have access to it. That's what we're doing here at HITRUST. So other industries started to take notice of the value HITRUST can bring. And a lot of that comes from the third-party assurance space too. Like we talked about the H3PT Council requesting organizations to do HITRUST. That's happening in other industries now too. So organizations are saying, look, we've been sending out questionnaires, we've been asking for certain reports, the quality's different, the consistency is not the best. How can we fix this? Well, we could ask for an E1 or an I1 report. That would make this a lot easier for us to see how secure they are. And we're getting more attention around those areas now that there's better and more options, more starting points for companies. So the industries that are tending to be more inclined to do HITRUST, more sensitive their data, the more, you know, security needs they'll tend to have. And you can look at our compliance factors. You know, the framework is free to download. So you can see we have things like PCI in there, where that's not just healthcare. That's anyone that's taking credit information should be looking at PCI requirements. So we have different factors in there, and we're gonna continue to evolve as we go forward to add more sources and make sure we have the relevant controls to adapt to our customer needs.
Yeah, and being that they're industry agnostic, you know, HITRUST gives you the flexibility of determining for yourself what data do I consider sensitive, or you know, or not even just me, but my clients, my prospective clients, or even vendors. So that you have that ability to determine, okay, well, within my organization, what is sensitive, and then build a HITRUST program around that. So, you know, HITRUST can be effective in any industry where you do have to store, process, or transmit any, you know, sensitive type information. You know, you know, you can use it in the print mail space, IT managed services space, you know, any type of industry where you are dealing with data. I'm working with a logistics company right now, actually, who's not in healthcare but wants to use the HITRUST framework as the basis for their risk assessment, because they have, you know, sensitive logistical information that they don't want to get in the wrong hands. So it can certainly be a benefit to any organization, not just in the healthcare industry.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I want to go back to one of the topics that we discussed when we were preparing for this. And you both mentioned that it's possible to leverage HITRUST without even being certified. Like, what would that look like, and why do that?
I can kick that one off. Yeah. So the framework is really the core value of HITRUST. You know, you're adopting these controls to protect your data, and some companies, they'll just use it internally. They'll just look at the framework and they'll look at, we need to be compliant with XYZ. Let's just open up the framework, see what the requirements are, and let's monitor ourselves against that. Other organizations will decide to say, let's get an assessment on this. Maybe they keep that internal, maybe they use that to report out. But the framework is where the value comes in, because it's deduplicated and it allows companies to stay with relevant controls that matter to them. So, you know, we put the framework out there so that organizations can use it and find value in it. And should you decide to get an assessment, that's what we have the assessor community for. You can use that as your new reporting option or request that report from others.
No, that makes complete sense. So I'm going to allow either one of you, if you got any parting advice or any thoughts to share with the folks? And the answer can be no, but I want to at least give you both a chance to say anything else that you might be thinking about that folks could find valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I can take the first stab here.
Yep.
Really, with high trust in and of itself, one thing to note is the amount of work that high trust has put into developing this ecosystem. It's been fantastic so far. Very appreciative to the high trust, the high trust team there in Texas, for all the hard work that they've put in, and I've definitely valued their ability to get feedback from not only just from assessors, but also from already certified participants and entities that aren't certified yet. They do a really good job at taking in all the information that they can to make a really successful program, and love that they're transparent about it. But specifically with us at 360, we've been doing high trust assessments since 2015. Pretty well versed in how it rolls and what goes on in the world of high trust. So definitely reach out to me if there are any questions at all that I can help answer, and we'll be more than happy to get those questions answered.
Excellent. And how about you, Matt?
I will say, with high trust, we are not the government. We are not, this scary company that sits behind, or up on our iron throne. You can talk to us. You can email us. You can call us. We're here to help. We want to educate you. We want you to feel informed when you're deciding to make a decision, because these are big decisions, and you're protecting data. You're making investments. You're working with different assessor firms. There's a lot of factors to consider. So, we are here. We have a full team of people that are ready, willing, and able to talk to you, whether it's what is high trust? I need a one-on-one session, or if it's, hey, I have this specific control need and I'm a little concerned, help me out. We can do both. That's what we're here for. So don't be strangers. I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at Collaborate in October down in Dallas. At any time, give us a call, talk to our team. That's what we're here for.
Excellent. Sounds great. Well, I do want to thank everyone for their time today. Be on the lookout for our webinar information for the event that we'll host in July. But until then, be looking for the communication from us. And again, always let us know if we can help. We're all about building relationships and, talking with folks to talk shop, share ideas, and get to know one another. That's really what's important to us. And so be happy to do that. So Matt and Ryan, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.